First responders are exposed to a lot of trauma. We call it vicarious or vicarious trauma, as some pronounce it.
Mm.
Divorce has become a common occurrence these days, and unfortunately for some, an extremely traumatic experience. And those of us who are first in line to support families in distress or in divorce crisis are profoundly affected. To talk about that today, my guest is Vicky Townsend. Vicky, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you so much, and I'm so grateful to be able to share a little bit about first responders and kind of inform people that don't really quite understand what they do for us and they sacrifice for us. So I appreciate the opportunity.
I'm grateful that you agreed to talk about this because it's a very important topic and it's becoming more and more so because divorce, like I said, is so common these days and really in certain countries and so with certain practitioners, really nightmarish experiences. So let's jump in and tell us, what is your side of the story and how did you get to do this?
Well, I've been in the divorce industry now for about 2 decades. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've always been somebody that wanted to be a rebel and change the way things are done because I spent a bloody fortune on my
Mm-hmm.
divorce. And
Yep, me too.
you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
6 years over here in the US. Um, and I knew, you know what? I'm a smart girl, Sinta. I
Mhm.
am not a dumb person, but that I just didn't know what to do. And getting myself involved, I felt like I was paying somebody else to feel my pain for me or make my pain go away. So I just kept writing checks. I just didn't know what to do. And I realized after it was over and I kind of calculated how much I had spent, it was then that I realized that it was in my lack of knowledge, lack of wanting to understand, and my hoping that somebody would have my best interest at heart.
Mm,
It was not working for me. And
mm,
the most expensive part of my divorce was me being uneducated and being unprepared. And
mhm,
so I decided that I wanted to help people do that and to come out of it with more resources so that they can move on in their lives. And
mm.
if I knew then what I know now, I'd be about $95,000 richer. So I
Yeah.
wanted to bring that, and we can talk about my story of how I got involved with first responders, um, because it's a very interesting story and one that changed the trajectory of my business and probably my life. I started my company, Divorce Right, um, with the goal of going into corporate America because
Mhm,
divorce causes 40% loss of productivity, absences to go visit,
mm,
for your attorneys and, meeting a realtor, going, changing
mm,
of child custody, going to pick up your kids and things like that. Um, and, distractions, errors,
mm,
presenteeism when you're physically there at work, but you're mentally checked out because you're
mm,
worried about everything. And so I was going down that path, where, the Googles and the Oracles were on my list
mhm,
and, Walmarts and Disney's. And one day I was in, I'm from South Florida, and a friend of mine works with fundraising for first responders in South Florida. And one day she was talking to one of their chaplains who somehow was talking about, how many of the firefighters were going through the divorce process
mm,
and that he knew how to save marriages, but he didn't know what to do to help them get through a divorce when it's needed. So she told him about me, and he and I spoke, and he says, "Do you think you can, work with a couple of our guys?" Actually, it was three. And I said, absolutely, I would love to. So the first guy I met, we went to a lovely coffee shop on Las Olas, if anybody's listening. It's a flower shop turned coffee shop. And so you're sitting in and amongst roses and sunflowers and peonies, and it's just beautiful. And so we met there for coffee and, a light breakfast, muffins and bagels. And he comes in and he sits down across the table from me. And, I always hate to ask somebody how they're doing because, when they come to see us,
Yeah.
things are not good. But in this case, I felt like he was just so disconnected and so out of it that I just said to him, I said, "Are you okay?" And he sat there for like just a few minutes. He was just looking off. It was a gaze that I can't even explain to you. He would look like a robot. And he goes, "Yeah, I just picked up a head off of I-95 from a traffic accident. And I had just taken a bite of my blueberry muffin and I went, and it goes and it hits the back of my throat. And the next thing I know, I can't breathe. I'm like, because my throat had shut. This lady next to me, she comes over, she reaches, pulls my arms up. This lady over here comes in, she starts rubbing my back. There was a gentleman over there that went to go get me some water. And the first responder sitting directly across the table from me, didn't even recognize anything had happened. He was so disconnected from not just me, but kind of life. And then the next day, I went and I met a young man. These are all, young men. They're in their 30s. And he had just pulled a 3-year-old out of the bottom of a hot tub. I worked with a gentleman a couple of weeks ago that had pulled a crushed baby out of a car. At 50 years old, he goes, "Vicky, I don't know how much longer I can do this." And it was at that point, after the one with the hot tub incident, where I said, "How do these guys go home and how can they be daddy?" Right? How can they go and chase their wife around the kitchen and go, "Hey, honey, let's go have date night"? How does that happen when this is what they see all day, every day? And I went back and I talked to the chaplain and I told him of these things. And I felt like, just such a lazy taxpayer that just didn't get it. I never thought about what these people see and what they sacrifice for us. And his response to me was, Vicky, the statistics are that someone like you is going to have between 3 to 5 traumatic events in our lifetime. Divorce, death of a loved one, health issues, that type of thing. He goes, "These guys have that on a 24-hour shift."
Wow.
And
Goosebump.
I said, "These guys need me. They need us. They need help and support because they're going, the guy with the hot tub incident, this was his third marriage. And he might have been in his early 40s, still a young man to me, right? He was probably in his early 40s. This is his third marriage. You start chopping up your pensions and your 401k and all of those things again and again, and a house again and again and again, and you have no resources. I don't know if you know this or not, but when a reason is cited with a note, a voicemail, an email, it's some sort of leave behind, divorce is the number one reason for suicide with police officers.
Really?
Number two is finances. And those are inextricably linked, right? When you don't have resources, when you don't feel like you can possibly move ahead in this life, how can you move ahead in this life? And, police officers, we forget that these guys drive around in a car all day by themselves with a gun on their hip. And we need to, in what I can do, right? I can't talk to them about, I deal with their trauma, and I know we're here to talk about that. I'm not here to help them through the trauma, but I want to do what I know how to do, which is help them through a process that eats them alive. Here in the United States, the divorce process, I don't know what it's like where you live, but it's a meat grinder. Like I said,
It's horrific. Yeah.
I spent over $100,000 on mine. And I will tell you that if I knew then what I know now, I'd be about $95,000 richer. And a lot, my mental health would probably have been a lot less damaged if I had simply known, when I was going through my own divorce, I I was just writing checks to just stop the pain, just stop the pain, right? But and thinking that I had somebody that was, looking out for my best interest. But you know what? Ultimately, they're looking out for their own best interest. They have light bills to pay. They have rent to pay. They have employees that they have to pay. And they just, the kid just got into Harvard, or, they need a new car, or they want to go on an expensive vacation, whatever that is, can influence it. And that there's money to be made in conflict and chaos. This is where the money comes.
Yeah.
And another thing that was the most expensive thing in my divorce was being uneducated and being unprepared. Had I had those two things, I could have been, like I said, I would have been about $95,000 richer. And so I brought my knowledge and, that the skills that I have to a market that so desperately needs us. They just so desperately do, because it's hard to go home and be daddy. It's hard to go home and be romantic,
Exactly. Yeah.
It really is.
It's absolutely hair-raising to think what the first responders go through. It's absolutely shocking that you say they have in a 24-hour shift what most people have in a lifetime that they have to deal with. It's tremendous trauma, tremendous. And
I don't know how firefighters work over there where you are, but here in the United States, when you're in a traffic accident, the fire truck comes and an EMS truck may come too. And we pass those accidents all day, every day. There's an accident, right? But what we don't think about is what happens to the people that have to get there and cut people out of their cars with the jaws of life, knowing that I have another one that I worked with. He had a man pinned under his car while the car was on fire, and he couldn't get him out. They tried to get him out from underneath the car, and they couldn't. Imagine that.
So there's an added level of trauma that I can maybe add here as a trauma specialist. The incident that happens and having to go and do the rescue is one thing, but being unable to execute that rescue successfully leaves that first responder with a lot of other things, a sense of failure, and the disappointment, and maybe sometimes even shame that they carry.
And I don't know if you saw earlier this year, the fires out in California here in the United States. Imagine you're trying to put out a fire and watching some family's entire life go down in a minute. Everything that they had, everything that they need, everything that was special to them was in those four walls, right? And and they're trying to put out fires and they can't, right? They try their hardest, but sometimes they can't. And taking that home too, right?
You can't rescue everyone. You can't help everyone. That's something that you learn. I'm also a first responder for ER24, our emergency service in South Africa, but I do the trauma side of it. And I know I have often come across an accident on the road, for example. And sometimes I would be first on the scene and I could provide support, but there's a comfort in the fact that I can take a step back the moment the medical,
right?
The people, the firefighters who come with the jaws of life to get the people out, or the medical people come. So I can be there and take a step back, and I know how it impacts me. So I can just imagine how it impacts the people who have to go all the way. But what I find interesting is first responders have been around for as long as we know. And yet they don't seem to have proper support in place, proper debriefing at the end of each day, mental health support for these people. Not everywhere. It's still lacking a lot.
I think here in the US, that's starting, there's a shift. I can feel it. Maybe it's because I'm, just now getting into it, but um, I feel that there are resources that are there for them that didn't used to be there. Now, some of the cities bring in their own licensed therapist that is actually embedded in the team, available to them. There are now peer-to-peer support. We work with a company called Peer Connect that it is it's a CAD system. It's a system. It's not a peer itself. But what it does is, let's say you and I are connected on this app, and you hear that something happened at my station and that I was involved with. And this alert goes out to all of our team members that are on our peer team, support team. And somebody says, I'll call her. So you call me, right? And you say, Vicky, I heard about it. How are you doing? And that has been tremendously effective and game changing. There are also peer-to-peer support apps now where there didn't used to be. Another one that we like is called The Guide. And that is, you can jump into a peer-to-peer group anonymously from anywhere around the world. There's one going on right now that you can jump into. So those types of things are available. And there are grants available for mental health support now that weren't there just 10 years ago. So I think that the tide is shifting here, not nearly enough. And, to your point, like, we want to help them as they go through the conflicts at home. And we've done that not only with divorce support, but we've actually got marriage support that we bring to the table.
Okay.
Yeah, we
That's
have
awesome.
a partner with a company called Our Relationship. They are an online program. It's currently being used by the Department of Defense. They've had $14 million worth of NIH funding. The research behind it is that their success rate is the exact same as in-person marriage counseling, and it is at a ridiculously reduced cost to the family. And it is effective and just a wonderful resource that we bring to the table, because we know that, if we got to them early, they may not need us. We do know, right? Statistics show that 50% of couples that go to couples counseling end up divorced in just a couple of years. My opinion on that is that they waited too late. You wait until somebody says, I want a divorce, it's too late. Oftentimes 50% of the time, it's too late. It's a coin.
I agree
So we
with
bring
you.
that. We bring parenting support, because children going through a divorce or, that sort of conflict at home, they suffer as well. They can have behavioral issues. So we bring parenting support to the table for these guys. And even an app that you talk to, it feels like you're talking to a person, but you're not, because our things don't happen Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 during work, hours, even though these are crazy hours. But, this is available to them when 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, that SOB didn't come home, right? So you get on the app, and what's nice about it is that it will take your notes from your app and send them to your therapist.
Fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
So your therapist is prepared for you when you need them. So, it's just, we are trying to change the way these guys experience how they bring their trauma from work home and how that impacts their families. And no matter whether they decide to stay or they decide to go, we want to offer that support for their entire family. And that's what we're doing.
I think it's wonderful that the whole family is supported, because for that person who works as a first responder, they almost have to go through a transformation at the end of their work day.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
From a first responder to a father and a spouse, partner or
hitting that, you know, opening the front door and having to put on this face of, hey, how was work today, honey? You
yeah.
can't ask that, right? There's
And they
uh
can't talk about what they've done and what they've seen,
they
actually.
don't want to, yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that it would be something that they would want to even share, right? It cuts too deep,
Yeah.
you know, reliving the trauma. I mean, it's one thing to do it with a therapist and with a counselor, or even with another peer. It's probably different to do that with your spouse at home,
Yeah, and you also don't want to go and offload on your family,
Right.
What I have heard a lot of first responders share with me, because I live in an area in Cape Town where we have mountains, we have lots of fires and
Mm-hmm.
high winds. So we have a tremendous amount of firefighters who sometimes work days on end.
Mm-hmm.
And what some of them have shared with me is that it's just too horrible to even repeat.
Yeah.
They just want to put it away, file it away somewhere and not think about it again, because tomorrow brings its own new load for the day, so they really need tools and skills to process it day to day, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Otherwise
you're
it
right.
adds up, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think you're
And
right.
And it's interesting that you say from a divorce point of view, you provide support for the family. But I'm wondering how much support there is in the world. I'm not aware of anything in South Africa that provides support to the spouses and the partners of first responders. Maybe they can benefit from some training to get a bit of understanding and to maybe learn some skills and tools also to greet that first responder when they come home at night
I
with
think
the
there
right
is.
kind of question,
I've met some people out when I'm on the road, at conferences and things like that do provide that. And I understand there are trainings that the chaplains provide
Mhm.
spouses of, as a matter of fact, in some of the agencies that I work with, it's like it's a part of the onboarding process when a new
Mhm.
hire comes in, that if
Okay.
it's a spouse, that they go through a class on this, because there's those 4 key risk factors, right, that
Mhm.
they face as a part of their job description.
Mhm.
It is unbelievable, high stress. I mean, if I don't know that there's a more stressful job, especially when that bell goes off. I've actually been
Yes.
in um stations when the bat alarm bell, whatever it
Mhm.
is, goes
Mhm.
off. And, you see guys that are, walking around, they're doing this, they're doing that, and then the boom, and they hit it, right? You can almost see the adrenaline hit their system.
Mm, mm.
And, you know, we've talked about the trauma that they've been exposed to, and the shift work, believe it or not, shift work, no matter whether you work at hospitals, you work at airports, or, a 7-Eleven that's open 24, excuse me, I've had a hiccup now, 24/7. But, um, you know, all of those are risk factors. And in the case of firefighters, I don't know how it is there in your country, but here they live in a frat house. They live with a bunch of guys, and they have a bro culture where, not a lot of good comes from marriages in that environment. They have
Very
access
true.
to a lot of things that are probably unhealthy, and
Mm,
definitely unhealthy for marriages and relationships. We talk about divorce, and I don't know what it's like in your country, but in this country, the younger generation's not getting married.
mhm.
But they
Same here.
still have
Yeah.
the emotional
Mm,
breakup. They still have maybe children together. They've bought
mm,
maybe a home together. They might even have a small business on the side together,
mm, mm,
So, there's still a lot of things that have to be untangled, and we can help them with that as well.
mm,
You know,
mm.
it's
Yeah.
it's still devastating.
It's complex, the situation. It's almost as if they have enough to deal with just
Right.
in their everyday lives, and then
Yes.
add a separation, breakup, or a divorce to the mix is lethal almost.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
living on a weird kind of edge all the time. First responders.
Yeah. It's I wish that there was an answer to all of this, that we could wave a magic wand and provide, because you know that everyone is its own unique thumbprint. Nothing
Mm,
is the same, right? And none of the solutions that we provide are the same. They may
mm.
feel the same sometimes, but the answers are unique and
That's
complex.
true. Yeah.
You know, I wish it was easy, but
I'm
it's
thinking of in the area that I live, again, I volunteer trauma support for the first responders simply because there aren't funds to pay for this sort of thing. So lifesavers, lifeguards, the firefighters, the emergency services people.
I
We need them and we
that's
always will need them, and their jobs won't change. There's no way of making their jobs easier for them because they deal with the most horrible things.
one of the things that I have been empowered to do, because I was one of those lazy taxpayers that just didn't think
Mhm.
twice about what they did. In my life, I have been taken to a hospital after an accident, but it was nothing, it was just, they were kind of
Mm,
checking me out. My mother fell in her home and they came and they took her to the hospital. Um, but other than that, I had never really had some sort of dire circumstance where I would
mm,
need a firefighter or a police officer. So I was a lazy taxpayer that didn't want my taxes to go up. I pay too much, blah, blah, blah. And to your point where you said there's no funds for people like to do the things, that's why I'm doing this with you today.
mm,
I tell the story about picking up the head off of I-95 for shock value, because it's
mm.
every freaking day of their lives
Yes. Yeah.
that they do things. I actually kind of got into an argument on LinkedIn with somebody saying,
Mhm.
how much money they made because they could have a second career. I'm like, hey, dude, they paint houses, they put up gutters, they install gutters, let's not, you know, they're not getting rich being
Mm.
firefighters, right? But I told him those stories that I told you. And I said, how much money would I have to pay you to
So,
do
yeah.
that job? Or
Mm,
could I pay you to do that
mm,
job?
mm,
You could not, uh, you could not pay. There's no amount of money in the world that
yeah.
that would make me do that job. So I
Mm,
feel like I want to scream it from the rooftops that I know you don't want to pay higher taxes. I get it, but these guys need support, or they're going to be like that 50-year-old guy that I was working with just a few weeks ago that pulled a crushed baby out of a traffic accident and said to me at 50 years old, Vicky, I don't think I can do this anymore.
mm, mm.
And we need these people.
We
We
do.
need them and we need to support them. And we need to understand, have some empathy for this is a career path that not many can do or would
Mm,
do. So we need, a, a couple of bucks, on your property tax. I don't know if you guys have property tax over there, but
we do.
if
Yeah.
property tax, or sales tax or whatever it is to support these guys so that they can continue to do the work that we will not do
Mm.
is important. So
And it's,
thank you for giving me the platform to be able
yeah.
to do that today.
Yeah, I'm grateful that you're having this conversation with me because we need to talk about these things. We seriously need to address this.
Yeah, we
And
do.
people who become first responders are a special breed, I almost want to say. They are people who feel called to do it.
Oh,
They're not
absolutely.
going to do something else, and they also don't want to stop doing it. They have a love for helping people and a love for, being
They're
able to
rescuers. They're
operate.
heroes. I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
they
Yeah.
really are heroes.
Mm,
And they just don't get the support that they need or the salary that they need. Um,
mm,
it's amazing that if this was um the corporate, market place instead of the
mm.
government
Yeah,
space, I don't know what we'd have to pay them to do that job.
yeah. I
It
can
would
just.
be, it would be, they'd be making 10 times what they make
Mm,
today.
mm,
So we need to think about things like that and give them the resources that they need so that they can go home and be daddy,
yeah.
right? And-
I like that. So they can go home and be daddy. That is so well said. I have to use that phrase.
Yeah,
It's apt.
yeah.
Vicky, tell me what your experience is. Mine, I have been supporting families going through divorce for 10 years now. I'm celebrating 10 years since I founded Fair Divorce, which is my divorce platform. And I have found many people who come to me ready to get divorced. And like you said earlier, by then it's too late to get counseling or help. Most of the time it is. But I have found those who have managed with my help and with my guidance to turn it around, to reconcile or to establish a new kind of relationship on a new level. Do you find that, especially working with first responders, by the time they get to you, are there some that you can still help to salvage the situation?
We're just now, that whole platform that I just shared with you, we
Mhm.
are here in the United States, we are called an EAP, an employee
Mhm.
assistance program.
Yes, we use the same term here. Yeah.
Okay, so we are creating all of those, the families, the marriage support program with Our Relationship, divorce support with my company, Divorce Right,
Mhm,
parenting support with Peace at Home Parenting, a Suno app, chat app, for
mhm.
mental support. And then we're
Yeah.
actually, we're in talks with two companies for full service mental health crisis care.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm,
and we're bringing that, and this is all new, like literally
mhm.
yesterday, the April 1st, right? We're literally just now bringing that out into to the public and
Yeah.
to first responders. And we also include in that, um, not just firefighters and police officers, dispatchers or EMTs, but we also think about emergency room personnel, right?
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
they are first responders also, trauma centers,
Mm,
first responders, urgent care centers, first responders.
mm,
So, we want to help everybody that has this issue and their marriages are at risk,
mm,
or or at higher risk for divorce than a traditional job. So, when your career impacts this, I think that it's the family support. But to your point, there's nobody doing this. We're it.
mm. Yeah.
So, this is a brand new launch, and we are excited to be bringing it to this space. And, we want to um, impact these families in such a positive way that they can, if their marriage can be saved, um, I hope that they can. I've actually just had our first firefighter go through the program yesterday. And he's actually doing it by himself. His
Mhm,
spouse is not going to do it with him. So this is new for us. So I will definitely let you know in a future broadcast, but their success rate, they're being used by, they're on the Department of Defense Military
mm,
One Source website. They have, you know, quite a number of military officers and support
Mm.
staff. You know, anybody in the military is welcome to use it. And they have a very high success rate, but you kind of have to know about it first. So that's what
Yes.
our goal
Yeah.
is to remind them that this is available. And it's something, doing this before you have problems is probably the smartest thing that a couple can
Yeah.
do, and I want to make this available to everybody.
Yeah. Well, it's sounds like a very well rounded, holistic, comprehensive support that you're offering. My Get Up and Grow has also got the employee
Mm,
wellness division where we do similar things. But I'm very impressed by the the amount of expertise and resources that you've put together to provide that service.
yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
it's. I want to ask you, how do you then envision supporting people to go through the program in terms of time and when they do it? Can people do this while they're at work, or do they have to do work through the program after hours? What are your thoughts on
Well,
that?
the marriage program is done from the comfort of their living room.
Mm-hmm.
It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It can be something that's a self-guided program, so you can do it
Mm-hmm.
on your terms, on your time. And then there's an upgraded package with live in-person coaching so that
Mm-hmm.
you can get through it. It's interesting that, the success rate of actually completing the program is much higher when you have a coach. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
definitely worth that investment. Um, Ours is, so that's for the marriage counseling. Ours is also, we have a 10-hour program designed to take you through all of your options. We teach you about the different ways to divorce. Here in the United States, there are 5 ways to get a
Mm-hmm.
divorce. And you know about one of them, which is you better lawyer up. You better hire a shark or a
Yes.
dog, or is that the way it is over where you live? Like you have to
Same
hire,
here. Yeah.
right? Those people are extremely expensive, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
and they make their money on this,
Conflict. Yeah.
and they can stir it up
Mm-hmm.
without you knowing it, without you realizing it.
Yeah.
So, but we teach that there are other ways to do this in a kinder, gentler way. And when I say kinder, gentler, I mean not only emotionally, but on your pocketbook, right?
Yeah.
On your wallet.
Mm.
So ours is a 10-hour course. Again, you do it on your own at your own pace, and you can even just kind of choose the modules that you may need to learn from. Peace at Home Parenting, they have a library of about 1,800 videos and articles from advanced degreed experts in child behavior, child development, mental health, psychologists, psychiatrists. And, so what's happening with your child? Is there academic decline? Are they, moody? Are they sneaking out of the house at
Mm.
night? There's all sorts of different, there's libraries for you to watch
Yeah.
depending on the search criteria that you need for your child.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is very much on, on your terms, not on
Mm.
ours. And if you need for us with the divorce coaching, which that's the one that needs probably the most customized hand holding, that, as no
Mm.
divorce is the same. We add coaching to
Mm.
these packages too. So it's available to them.
Mm.
And that's on there, and we'll meet with them on their terms too, on their
Yeah.
timeline, not on mine.
Yeah. So that's good. So they can do it in their own time at their own pace then as they feel comfortable. Because I
Mhm.
know with first responders specifically, they're exhausted at the end of the day. So it's a challenge, and it takes some coaching also to help them to carve out a bit of time
Yeah,
and generate a bit of energy or save a bit of energy for that little bit that they need to do. It's so hard when the support and the resources are within your reach, but you're just too exhausted to access it.
yeah,
Mm.
agreed.
Yeah,
It's it's
sure.
it's it's a community of people that we can't live without.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we have to treat them like fine antique upholstery because they are tender and
Mm.
um, like I said, doing things that you and I, if we, well, you do, speaking of vicarious trauma, I was hearing, one of the peer, companies that we work with, what they found, which was, I think, very interesting, was that after a traumatic accident where children are killed or, something like that, that everybody is brought into the room and they're debriefing about this. But there are some people, like maybe you, that was way out, that was just putting up traffic barriers, stopping traffic and diverting them off the highway, right? And didn't actually see the event itself, right? They were just there directing traffic, or maybe somebody was sweeping up glass or something like that and did not get exposed to trauma. But these debriefs actually caused more trauma to the people that never
Yes.
experienced it.
Mm.
So we've got to be mindful about how we even talk about these things, right?
Mm.
So it's a complicated situation.
Very much.
And
Yeah.
they deserve our help, our support, and our uh our empathy and our tax dollars. I will continue on that. I will harp on that until the day I die. We don't pay them enough.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I'm so glad that you are taking up this position and advocating for the first responders. It's vitally important. And I'm inspired all over again while I'm listening to you to get in there and do more and do better. We really have to do right by these people because we
Yes,
all
agreed.
rely on them. And some of us are fortunate enough to go through our entire lives never needing a first responder. But some of us do. And on that day that you need them and you call on them and they're there, you're going to be so grateful
Yes. Yes.
that they are there.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We need to treat them like the heroes they are.
And some of them really go the distance. I must just share a brief story with you. About 18 months ago, my son and his father were in a horrible car accident. And his father was critically injured and airlifted to a hospital. But my son was fortunately not critically injured. And a paramedic who's a first responder sat with him, and she phoned me. Now I was in Cape Town in the south of South Africa, and this happened in Johannesburg in the north of South Africa. So we were about 1,500 kilometers apart when I get the phone call. Your son has been in an accident, but he's okay. But that first responder sat with him, traveled with him in the ambulance. I caught a flight later that night. She sat with him at the hospital until I got there after midnight. She communicated with me on the phone on a regular basis to update me about where they were, what was happening, how he was doing. She kept his phone charged for him. It was absolutely incredible, the lengths that she went to comfort him, to support him, to stay with him until I got there. I get goosebumps just telling you the story. Now, that is the kind of people that first responders are. It was absolutely incredible. That
Heroes.
whole, from getting that phone call as a mom, in that tremendous shock and the rush and everything to try and get there, hoping that he's okay. And he was fine. But she did an absolutely excellent job. And she didn't have to. She could have, treated him and made sure that he was stable and handed him off to the ambulance and washed her hands off him. But she didn't. She stayed with him all the way. He was 16 at the time. It was absolutely incredible. So yes, that's the kind of people we are dealing with. That's the kind of people who love what they do, who love people, and they're absolutely passionate about their work. They will not do anything else. They will not do anything less. And we really, really can do better to support them.
We do. We need to. We have to, or else
Yeah.
we're gonna lose. We're gonna lose a generation. We're gonna lose some people that bring incredible experience to the table, handling incidents that, like I say, you and I, you probably would more than me because you've been at these scenes. I couldn't do it. And I'm here to admit it, and I'm here to champion these people that do things that I wouldn't do.
Yeah. And you're doing a great job. Wonderful. It's absolutely incredible. And
Thank
as I'm
you.
listening to you, I'm also thinking how this will impact recruiting new people into this work,
That's a
with
good.
the statistics and things that are coming to light on how difficult it is for first responders and how it impacts their private lives and their relationships and their families. It'll
It's an
become more
interesting,
difficult.
yeah, that's an interesting uh idea because it I'd never really looked at it from a recruitment issue because I do know that even having the conversation of divorce with them is difficult because it is a recruitment,
Mm,
issue.
yeah.
And so having this kind of support, and if somebody's considering, one agency, one station versus another, right, department, having something like this may be a game changer in their recruitment efforts,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And I thank you for even opening my eyes to that because I think it could be that,
yeah.
but support for their marriage, their family, um, their relationship, and God forbid that they should choose to end it,
Mm,
there for
mm.
them in all ways.
Almost has to be included in their training, I think, to a
Mhm.
degree. Yeah.
Yeah, onboarding, like I told you about that company and the chaplains that if they're lucky enough to have chaplains that work with them, the chaplains do some training around,
Mm, mm,
around that when they are new hires. And I think it's a good idea for us to be included in onboarding for
mm.
sure.
Absolutely, I agree. This
Yeah.
is such a great conversation. I think it's so, so important that we talk about this because there's a dire need for better support for our first responders all over the world, no
Mhm.
matter what they are doing. Uh, yeah, they need to be honored much more.
Your brain can only take so much,
Yeah.
right? And we need to help them. They take the stuff in and it becomes PTSD. And
Mm,
um, you know, we wonder why their marriages don't last.
yeah.
It's
It's a no-brainer, actually. Like you said in the beginning, the list is endless of the things that happen in their everyday lives that are detrimental to a relationship and a marriage
yeah,
or to having a family,
yeah,
apart from the long hours and the stress. And if I'm thinking about it from an employee benefit point of view, I wonder how their annual leave and things compare to other careers.
yeah, yeah. It's there are other things that they could probably do. And
Mm,
to your point, it's something that they're drawn to do because they are rescuers, right?
mm,
You and I think are rescuers too in our own way.
yeah,
Um, and so it's something that they're led to do, but maybe if they didn't do that, they'd be doing, some other kind of work. I don't know. This is something that they are built to do,
yeah.
and we need to care for them in ways that we haven't thought about before. We
Mm,
need to start caring for these guys with their mental health
mm,
and well-being, and
yeah.
understand that because they do the job that they do, other things go sideways sometimes,
Mm,
and we just need
definitely.
to be there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Just a last question, Vicky. In the area that you work, do you know what percentage of the first responders are men and how many are women?
Yeah, in the fire department, it tends to be in the 90% male because it
Mm,
is a very physically demanding
mm,
career. So you have to be able to, I mean, the equipment that they wear is
mm.
about 100 pounds. I mean, it's
Wow.
really, it takes
Yeah.
a lot of strength. And they're, just the fire hose itself is really, really heavy. So,
Mm,
so it tends to attract, I've met though female firefighters and they are awesome. Um,
mhm,
Interestingly enough, female firefighters have a much higher divorce rate than male firefighters.
Oh,
Uh,
that's interesting.
yeah, I still have to figure that one out. Haven't figured that one out yet, but I guess, obviously they have the same stressors, but maybe some additional ones
Mm,
for, from home, being around men all day long or something. I don't know. Police officers, there's a lot more police officers in that are women.
mm,
I don't know what the exact percentage of it is, but I still think it's predominantly a male
yes.
oriented profession, but there's
Mm,
more and more women are police officers.
mm,
And yeah, so there's that's the good news, is that women are being drawn to that profession, which is awesome. Um, and just probably like military too. Military probably is still more male than female. Um, I don't have those, but I do know in the firefighting world that it's in the
yeah.
90s.
It's still, I think, mostly in my experience, also predominantly male, still to this day.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, that also says something about how men and women are different, eh? And how we are differently wired. And yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it probably also ties in with traditional views in Western cultures where men are expected to be strong and bear it and be tough and not cry and all that sort of stuff. So that's probably why proper support for first responders hasn't really taken off much
Well,
until
I'm
recently.
hoping that through platforms like this, that people start to understand
Mm,
that we owe them beyond their salary. We owe
yeah.
them outstanding support mentally.
Mm,
We owe them out physically. Imagine carrying 100 pounds for your job every day,
mm,
imagine what that is doing to your body. They're exposed to the harshest of chemicals.
yeah.
So we need to take care of their physical body.
Mm,
We need to take care of their heart, their emotional state. They're human beings, no matter.
yeah.
Um, eh, we need to rethink how we take care of these first responders.
Mm,
They give up so much for us that
they
we
do.
just don't think about.
Yeah. The sacrifices that they make is something that we can be eternally grateful for. I am. I mean, I have had interactions with them on a personal level, and I work with them professionally also. So it's absolutely paramount that we have these discussions. So, Vicky, thank you so much for bringing your experience and your wisdom to the
Thank you, my
table
friend, for
so we
allowing
can
me to
talk
be
about
here.
this.
I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, I'm really grateful. Very few people are prepared and also able and allowed to talk about these things. I know in South Africa, many of the first responders have told me they're not really allowed to divulge any details of the traumatic things that they are exposed to. So it's also hard for them to talk about it on a public
Yeah,
platform.
I don't know that it's what they're able to do here. I assume, if there's a tragic accident, that they have, uh their media spokesperson type of, PR person that handles those kinds of things that they don't get involved in.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, but the stories that I hear are, they've been a game changer for me. They have changed the
mm,
trajectory of my business.
mm,
Um, and I know that this is going to be a game changer for them as well. So
yeah,
um, thank you for the work you do. And thank you for volunteering, because that's pretty amazing.
yeah.
That's a
It's
very
a,
amazing thing to do.
it's an honor for me to do that. It's very important to
It
me.
is.
But thank you for you and what you're doing, and I wish you all the best with your
Thank
endeavor.
you.
And we must talk some more and see how
Would
else
love that.
collaborate about this over the oceans, you know?
Yes, yes, okay, wait, because you know what, emotions are emotions. Trauma is trauma. Doesn't matter if it's in South Africa or in Chicago, Illinois, or, in Australia. It's all trauma is trauma, and it impacts how we move in this world, and it impacts families and relationships. And we need to provide as much support as possible.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much.